Hello and welcome to the Wednesday check-in presented by the Gokhstein News Network. Today is August 27th, 2025, and I'm your host, Landy. We're going to take a look at Bitcoin and Ethereum again today. We might check in on Solana as well. I believe it hit one of the key levels overhead that we had been watching for quite some time. But let's start with Bitcoin here on the daily, kind of follow up with where we left off on Monday. Right now, I have highlighted the weekly zone of interest. It's between 109 and 112. This is the prior weekly higher high closing structure and swing structure. And we see that, we did get that move down to the bottom side here at 109 and swing below before bouncing back up. And now we see that Bitcoin did close the Tuesday session right around 112, then backed off of that after swinging above to the lower first standard deviation of the Bollinger Band set here in the Wednesday session. So we still have to kind of see where things go during the Thursday session. Now, there is some important preliminary data coming out for GDP metrics. And so far, that the last update was showing growth over projected. That I imagine is going to stay pretty consistent based on some of the other numbers that have come out in between the last projection and now. And, the other big kind of market impacting economic number that's coming out on the Thursday session is going to be unemployment claims. So we'll kind of see how that affects price. Might be in for some lower term time frame volatility and then, direction picked later kind of a thing. We'll see kind of how that kind of shakes out during the day. And in fact, let's go ahead and take a look at the time. This is going to be Thursday session. We've got numbers coming in at 7:30 a.m. So for preliminary GDP and unemployment claims are all going to be coming out at the same time. And that's something to just kind of keep in the back of your mind as you're watching price action. But in this case, we did get that swing of the 109 right here by now the daily lower second standard deviation. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this for right now, and we're going to go and take a look at the support and resistance zones of interest here. And in this zone, this weekly, right here for price action, we can see that this is, of course, the 112 high, the prior closing weekly higher high with the all-time high that was at 112 prior to the consolidation and move back to the top side here before the breakout. We did also have that closing weekly high come in at 109 or just slightly above 109. That is currently where the daily lower second standard deviation is. And realistically, for continuation for the bears to the downside, they have to close below the lower second. And this would be met with a follow-up close for continued expansion to the downside below the wick low here at 108,670. That would put Bitcoin right squarely at this low for the next major area of interest. And that would be both on lower term timeframes and higher term timeframes around that 108 to 107, 270. If that is dropped, you can see the lower third standard deviation now down by our 105 area, and you can take a swing below 104 as a possible target as well there. Anywhere below there, we'd be looking back to the 1272. That's more of a temporary area, somewhere around the 103.5. But realistically, it's kind of 104 to 105 if we see the 107, 108 area dropped. But again, lower term timeframes, if we do see price trade below 109, we could even see a swipe at or a liquidity grab around that 107, 108, as long as it's closing back above the 109 inside of this weekly. I would be looking for the possible opposite side of that trade. I have taken, some scalps off of the low and the swing below and failed to close below. In fact, I'll kind of review what I've talked about on Spaces a little bit. On the 15-minute time frame down here, we got a swipe, and the purple area there is the high side structure. 110 to, the 111 area, just about on the daily here for closing structure. But we saw that we hit it, bounced above the 112 region and failed around 113.5, just slightly above 113.5 at 113.6 or so. Came back down, tested, tried to swing above, looked fairly weak, and then got in the midst, in the thick of that daily area of interest before swinging the weekly. And this was on volume, so that was a pretty good trade back to the top side of the weekly. And we have seen price kind of play around that area while using the daily as support for right now. In the lower term timeframes, if you do see the daily drop around 110.8 or so, or get below 111, eyes on this daily area again, down to the low 110 region, and then possibly a swing back to that weekly at 109, and then kind of gauge price action from there. So to the upside, if the bulls can climb their way out, I have a bearish bias below around 118, as I've mentioned. So we can see that on the daily here, we have the lower first standard deviation kind of governing the candle swings after breaking back in here. We had a retest of the basis and rejection. And again, the criteria there was, we needed to break above, 117.8, 118, and then take out this little, excuse me, this little swing high at 118.641. To really go back and test 119 to 120, and then bears have very little cover above 121. They can still fight back, but you're going to see a lot of readjustment from the bears above there. And realistically, they have a position of strength at this particular moment here. And what would we need to see to set a low? Need to see closes back above 112. 4 technically, and back above the lower first standard deviation. But realistically, you want to see a little bit above there, put Bitcoin back above the closes. And I am talking on daily closing candles. I would put Bitcoin back above the close opens here, and right around this this close open where we have a bit of an order block there. Now I do order blocks a little bit differently than some, but a little bit of an order block there with the bounce off of 112 after dipping in for liquidity, hit resistance. I essentially need to see 112.700 to set a low, but nothing really interesting until we see Bitcoin come back and retest the 114.750 to 115.7 where the basis is, and then break the downtrend on closes above 117.5. And even then, I need to see Bitcoin closing above 118. And realistically, it can play around in these areas, but it's more of a downside bias right now, and unless we see that 118 reclaimed from here, at least as structure is currently painting on the chart. So it's, I've seen many calling for this to be the low and to get in, and honestly, just, gauge it for yourself. If we do start to see the daily start to turn around and put in a low, then at least we know we have the potential to test up further 114.750 to that 115.7 by the basis, and then kind of gauge it in between essentially 116 to 118, and see if we can get that downtrend break from the bulls. Otherwise, if they drop the lows, it's going lower. 108 to 107, 105 is a big area. And then realistically below there, on the weekly and the daily area, it's going to be 101. This is that weekly prior higher low at 101 to that 98.225, right where the lower first is coming in. So, but just kind of gauge it, see how things work out. It is the end of the month. There's some liquidity rotation going on. There's a lot of economic news that was coming in last week into this week, and we'll continue to get that economic news for the outlook of where the economy is here in the United States in the first part of September. At least the first week is going to be pretty heavy in terms of news events for economic data. And market participants are kind of hedging their way into this one. Now let's go ahead and get rid of that and clear our chart. Go back to Ethereum. Now Ethereum did swing around the 4,400 level and below to around 4,300. Still in a strong position right here. I need to see a low set above. Now it was prior around the 4630, 4650 level. I need to see closes above the upper first and specifically 4664 to set that low and give it a good chance to run back to the high. But we are moving from expansion into compression. This is a bullish setup still. It's in the bullish half of the bands. And now, unless we see a close below 4257 here, I'd be aware of the bulls trying to push their way through, if especially if Bitcoin's starting to regain some levels to the upside. Maybe Ethereum might show the hand for the market here, but you want to see them moving in tandem. Being above the basis band, definitely bullish, but anywhere below 4,400, even in lower term time frames, keep an eye on that 4,300 level. This last swing low in this wider range. If it is dropped, then we're looking to the next big area at essentially 4K. So right around the lower second and an 888 fib. If it drops that, 3930 is the next area to around 3,900 by the lower third. And typically, I mentioned this on Monday, but typically when you see an expansion to compression, when we see that, it's not until we see closes like above the upper second, above the prior all-time high here, that I would start to get excited. But there's two conditions. Need to see a close above the prior all-time high at that 4870 or so by the upper second. But also, we need to see a close now above the 4955 current all-time high. And then we can start looking to the mid to low 5,500 area, because we would start to see expansion above the upper second. Same goes for the downside. Lower first on even swings is an area of interest in terms of volatility, just below 4,300, coming in around the 4,250 level, and then down towards 4K by the lower second. If those are dropped, then it's expansion down into support, the 3930 to 39, and then 3750 to 3635 down here, which is a daily level. But really have to start looking at some of the candle structure over here if that were to occur. But so far it is in a stronger position. I believe Solana actually is, also in an uptrend and in a stronger position than Bitcoin in terms of a band setup. It's in the bullish half of the bands. It has set another higher low, so eyes on the last higher low at 185. If it drops, lower first is right around 180. You would want to see that hold up. And of course, above the 209, 210 level, we would see expansion to the upside, at least targeting 220, possibly more. But realistically, we need to see close over close price momentum get above there to kick off expansion. Then we can start entertaining targets up further to the 250 level. And that's the next big weekly area of interest, just below the all-time highs at just over right at 295 there. But this is a big deal right now. If we start to see Bitcoin hold the lows on the weekly and start to turn around, and we see Ethereum start to crack above its all-time high, and especially on a close, on expansion, and then we see alts like Solana and other, top 10 cap coins start to move for alts in the same direction in tandem, that's going to look pretty good for a sector-by-sector alt season starting to get revved up. But it's not a foregone conclusion right now. I know that there's a lot of talk of that, but it's absolutely not a foregone conclusion. I want to point you back to kind of where we are now. So we've had a pretty sustained drop. So, and Bitcoin dominance in this case, but it's now everybody's changing their criteria. Before it was like, oh, we need to hit around, below 50% back here. And, below 50%. And then it's like, well, now it's below 55%. And then it's alt season and everything's going to rip. I think that we're going to see a sector by sector run in alts if we do dip back into the 57.25 to 55 area and start to break below. I don't think it's going to be everything pumping, including all the dust in your bags. I think it's going to be a rotational pump if that does occur. But realistically, what you want to see if you're in altcoins, you want to see Ethereum, Solana, and all the other top altcoins start to move in tandem. Ethereum break above its all-time high and start to kick things off, and then see the others follow by breaking their all-time highs and getting close of our close on the daily, and then led into the weekly, or let that bleed into the weekly in terms of close over close price momentum and structure for expansion. But right now, watch 109. If we do see it dropped, pay attention. We could see swings around 107 to 108. But if that is dropped, especially on a close, we're looking 104, 105, anywhere below there. Realistically, it's, 98 to 101 is the major area that you want to see hold up for Bitcoin. And that's all I got for you this Wednesday. I will be back on Friday, of course, with the Friday wrap up and see where we end up after, what I think is going to be not necessarily like the most important, information, but definitely relevant economic information on this Thursday session. And then, kind of what to look forward to for the weekend and what to watch out for. I hope that you all go ahead and like and share this out there if you enjoyed this and or found it informative. And I wish you a wonderful morning, afternoon, and evening, no matter where you are in the world. Please trade safe. And of course, as always, stay safe. With all that being said, Landy out. See you Friday.